This is J. Krishnamurti's 8th public talk in New Delhi, 1962.
This is the last talk. I would like, if I may, this evening, talk about freedom and that quality of energy that is necessary to find a new way of living. We have been talking about great many subjects concerning everyday life. We have not been just talking about abstractions, about ideas, nor have we indulged in scholastic or theological conceptions and formulations. We have been dealing with facts. And it would be 1,000 pities if those of you who have listened should translate all that has been said into mere ideas, conclusions, and formulate certain sanctions and follow them as a method in order to arrive at what you think is the ultimate reality. We have not laid down any path, because there is no path. There is no way, no system, because we are concerned with the whole totality of life, not with one segment, not with one part, or with one idea or series of ideas, but we are concerned with living, with the totality of life. And as we observe daily in our daily activities, in our troubles and sorrows, our life is getting more and more complex. There is greater and greater division and contradiction in ourselves and in society. In ourselves as individuals, and in ourselves as collective human beings. More and more freedom is being denied, either in the name of religion, organized spiritual thought and belief, or institutionalized political action. If you observe, and it does not demand a great deal of intelligence, that politics have become extraordinarily important, and the political leaders seem to usurp the whole of the world, where they are thought by their activities, what they say, what they don't say. We are being conditioned by them. At one time, the priests of religions shaped our minds. Now the politicians and the newspapers mold our thought. They are becoming the priests. And it shows how extraordinarily superficial, how on the surface we are living. And we talk about freedom from a superficial level. We talk of freedom from something. And is freedom from something real freedom, or merely a reaction, and therefore not at all freedom? And we must have freedom. Not the verbal freedom, not the mere political freedom, or the freedom from organized religions. That, I think, most intelligent people, most people who are aware of the world situation, have gone away from these institutionalized ways of life. Though they have a superficial effect on our life, but deeply they have not much effect. And if one is to find out what is freedom, one must question everything, question every institution, the family, the religion, marriage, tradition, the values that society has imposed upon us, education, the whole structure of social and moral organization. But we question not to discover what is true, but to find a way out. And therefore, we are never psychologically free. We are concerned more with resistance and not with freedom. And I think this is important to understand. All our life is built on resistance, on defense. And a mind that has taken shelter behind defense can never be free. And we need freedom, complete, absolute freedom. But to understand the quality and the depth of freedom, one must first be aware in what manner, at what depth we have built defenses and resistances psychologically. And on these defenses, resistances, we depend. And behind these walls, we look upon life. From behind these resistances, we look and translate life. So, before we can inquire, find out what is freedom, we must understand the resistance that we have built, and also never to build again any form of resistance. These two must be understood before there can be freedom. We have built up resistance ideologically, verbally, traditionally, because psychologically we take shelter behind these resistances. If you observe yourself, you will see this to be a fact. And we are not discussing, we are not talking as a communication merely of words, but we are concerned with the understanding of ourselves. Because without understanding yourself, you cannot go very far. Without knowing yourself as you are, not the supreme self and the divine self and all that kind of theological nonsense and ideas, but actually what you are from moment to moment. That's what you are. Not the ideas, not what you want to be, but the fact of what you are, which fact is undergoing change all the time. It's never still. And one has to understand that. That is, there must be self-knowing to know oneself. And without knowing oneself, it is absolutely impossible not to live in illusion. So, we are inquiring not into ideas, not into a new formulas, new speculative theories, but we are actually looking at ourselves, as it were, in a mirror, and from that observation discover for ourselves what it is to be free. If we have the capacity to look at ourselves without distortion, to see actually what we are, then every form of resistance, every form of dependence ceases. And that's what we are going to do. As I was saying, we have built resistance because we are always in conflict. We have never a moment when we are not in a struggle, in travail, in sorrow, in conflict, in some form of confusion. And to escape from this confusion, from this sorrow, from this insufficiency, poverty of being, we have built walls. And behind these walls we take security. And these walls are ideas. They have no value at all, but they are just ideas. They are just verbal structure. When you call yourself a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or what you will, that's merely ideas, words. They have no reality. They are symbols. And symbol has no reality, it's merely a shadow. But to find out what is beyond the shadow, one must leave the shelter, the refuges, the resistances. So, we have, during the course of our lives, built walls of resistance. Resistance as an idea, as an ideal. The more spiritual you are, so-called spiritual you are, the more ideals you have. And ideals are resistances. They are not facts. The fact that you are violent is real. But the ideal of non-resistance is spurious. It has no value at all. That's a form of resistance which prevents you from looking at the fact that you are violent. So, a mind that is inquiring into freedom, and there must be freedom, because I will go into it presently and you will see the real significance of it. One must be completely free of romantic ideals, because they are irreal. The ideals which the churches have built up, religions have built up, the saints have built up. They are forms of resistance and have no validity. What has validity is the fact, which is that you are violent, or that you are ambitious, greedy, envious, creating enmity. And a mind that is ridden by ideals, as most minds are, derived from books, derived from their gurus, derived from society. Such a mind can never be free, because we are dealing with actuality, with facts, and not with theories, not with speculations. As we pointed out earlier, a religious mind is concerned with fact, as the scientific mind is concerned with the observable facts under the microscope. We are concerned with psychological facts. And when we are examining those, it's only in the freedom from resistance there is mutation. That is, change implies a resistance to the present, a continuity of the present modified, but still the continuity of what is, only modified. That's not mutation. When we are concerned with freedom, we must also inquire into the question of change. Because a mind that is concerned with change, which is gradually, through time, through a long period, through a process, which if you observe is a modified change, but continuing the same old pattern. And there is only mutation, not gradual change. The idea that you will gradually change is another form of resistance. Either you change immediately or you don't change at all. You don't change because the very process of change implies revolution. And there is fear of what might happen. So through fear, you resist every form of change. And a mind that resists change can never understand what it is, implies mutation. That is, sirs, you are angry. And you say, I will get over it. I will become non-angry. So you have introduced another problem, which is the ideal. And therefore there is a conflict between what you are and what you should be. The ideal then becomes the means of gradual change. Therefore you really don't change at all. There is mutation only when you see anger and end it immediately, and not build the defense of an idea. Please observe, think this over, look at it. As I am explaining it, look at it yourself. Don't accept what we are talking about. There is no authority in the world in spiritual matters. If you have authority, you are dead. So, when you introduce the time element, that is, I will change gradually, you don't change at all. The gradual process is a form of resistance, because you have introduced an idea which has no reality. What has reality is that you are angry, you are vicious, you are ambitious, envious, acquisitive. Those are facts. Now, to look at them and to be free of them immediately is all important. And you can change them immediately when you have no idea, when you have no ideals but are capable of looking at them. So, freedom is the capacity to look at the psychological fact without distortion. And that freedom is at the beginning, not at the end. That is, if you understand that time is a process of evasion and not a fact, except chronological time, which is a fact, but the psychological time that we have introduced as gradually bringing about a change in ourselves has no validity, because when you are angry, when you are ambitious, envious, you take pleasure in it. You want it. And the idea that you will gradually change has no depth behind it at all. So, one removes psychological resistances by observing the fact and not allow the mind to be caught in unreal, ideational, theoretical issues. When you are confronted with a fact, there is no possibility of resistance. It is there. So, freedom is to look at the fact without any idea. To look at a fact without thought. I will go into that little. You will see what I mean. Either you look at a fact with words, which is thought, or with conclusions, which again is thought and words, or with knowledge which you have acquired previously, which again are words based on experience, which is the result of memory, which conditions every form of experience. So, to look at something without thought, which does not mean to look at something blankly, emptily, but to look at it through the understanding of the whole significance of thought. May I suggest something? There are several people taking notes. Don't, if I may suggest. This is not a lecture for you to take home and consider. You're considering it now. You're listening now, not tomorrow, not after the meeting is over. And you can't listen while you are taking notes. Listen implies attention. And you can't attend doing various other things and paying verbal attention. Attention means complete, not concentration. Listening with all your being, with your heart and mind, because our lives are concerned. Because we feel everything must be given to us on a silver platter, that we have got to do nothing. We have to work tremendously hard to salvage ourselves out of this confusing misery of the political, religious world, of the society. Otherwise we are being destroyed. This is not a rhetorical statement, but actual fact. So do please, if you are at all serious, you must be somewhat serious to come and sit here for a whole hour. Do please pay attention. Don't knit, don't write, don't wiggle about. Give your whole mind, your life is at stake. So, when you are confronting a fact, every thought is a form of resistance. Because why should you have a fact, thought? Can't you look at something without thought? Can you look at a flower, a tree, a woman, a man, a child, an animal, without thought? That is, can you look at a flower non-biologically, non-botanically? To look at something, to look at a flower non-botanically. Though you may have knowledge concerning the flower, what species, what kind of flower it is, and so on, so on, so on, all the color, the perfume, the beauty, all that interferes from looking at the flower, which is the thought process prevents you from looking. Just understand this. Not to say, how am I to get at that stage when I can look without the word, without thought? You can't. There is no system, there is no power. But if you understand that you do not see anything clearly, definitely, sanely, if thought interferes, then you stop thinking but looking. But look. So, freedom is that state of mind that comes into being when it is concerned only with fact and not with opinion. And to look at yourself in that mirror of freedom, whatever you are, without the distorting effect of thought. And if you do look at yourself like that, there is immediate, instant mutation. That is, if you can look at yourself when you are angry, to know the fact that you are angry, envious, acquisitive, and this is the structure on which society is built. Envy, acquisitiveness, ambition, and so on. This is the structure on which society is built. And if you can look at society, the morality of society, which is yourself in relationship with another, then as you see yourself actually as you are, without the interference of thought, then there is absolute mutation. Then you are no longer ambitious. Of course, if you take pleasure, if you derive benefit from being envious, from being ambitious, as most politicians do, not most, all politicians do, then you won't listen to what is being said. But a man who is inquiring into the whole process of freedom must come to this point when mutation takes place without time. And that can only happen when thought is not interfering with the fact. So there is no resistance. And you will see that most of us are in conflict. Most of us live a life of contradiction. Not only outwardly, but inwardly. Contradiction implies effort. Watch yourself, please. I am explaining, but I am explaining you. And where there is effort, there is a wastage. There is waste of energy. Where there is contradiction, there is conflict. Where there is conflict, there is the effort to get over that conflict, which is another form of resistance. And where you resist, there is also a certain form of energy engendered. You know, when you resist something, that very resistance creates energy. I resist what you are saying. To resist what you are saying is a form of energy. And that energy prevents from being free from contradiction. Now, through resistance you can create energy. Through contradiction you can create energy. Most people do. You know, the people who have contradictory selves, opposing selves, wanting to do this and not wanting to do that. The two elements in man, the good and the bad, the two in friction makes us act. All action is based on this friction, that I must and I must not. And this form of resistance, this form of conflict, does breed energy. But that energy if you observe very closely, is very destructive. It is not creative. I mean by that word creative and something entirely different, which you will understand as I will go into it. Most people are in contradiction. And if you have a gift, a talent to write or to paint or to do this or that, out of that contradiction and the tension of that contradiction gives you energy to express, to create, to write, to be. The more the tension, the greater the conflict, the greater the output. And that's what we call creation. It is not at all creation. It is the result of conflict. And to face the fact that you are in conflict, that you are in contradiction, will bring that quality of energy which is not the outcome of resistance. Please understand this. Look, most of you probably go to your offices every morning. Probably you have done this for the last 20 or 10 or 30 years. It must be a terrible bore, an agonizing effort. Unless you are become so completely mechanical, you go there like a machine goes to the moves. Now, to observe the fact that you are bored, that you are being destroyed by this machine, merely observe it, watch it. Don't say, I must not. What am I to do? How am I to stop being bored? But merely observe the fact. Then you will see, through that observation of the fact, you will see how mechanical your mind has become. And how the office, the job, has taken the place of life, of living. Which doesn't mean you give up the job, but you begin to understand the whole significance of action. Let me put it in a different way. For most of us, action is an idea. For most of us, action is based on an idea. I must be good. India is a nation and therefore must resist, must build up. An idea and then action. And therefore, if you observe, in that there is contradiction. And to get over that contradiction, you create more ideals. You change ideas, but always action is based on an idea. Now, if you observe that your action is based on an idea, then you will see that the idea is a form of resistance to complete action. Look, sir, society approves your action, which is as long as you are acquisitive, envious, ambitious, seeking power, position, prestige, society approves it. And on that you base your action, which is that action is considered respectable, moral. But it's not moral at all. power in any form is evil. The power of the husband over the wife, or the wife over the husband, the power of the politicians, the more tyrannical, the more bigoted, the more religious, more evil it is. That's a fact, provable, observable fact. But society approves of it. You all worship the man in power. And you base your action on that power. So if you observe that your action is based on acquisitiveness, on power, on the desire to succeed, to be somebody in this rotten world, then facing the fact will bring about a totally different action. And that is true action, not the action which society has imposed upon the individual. So, the social morality, which is not morality at all, which is immoral, the social morality is another form of defending ourselves, and therefore being gradually destroyed by society. And a man who would understand freedom must ruthlessly be free of society. That is, psychologically, not physically. You can't be free of society physically, because everything you do, you depend on society. The clothes you wear, the office, the money, this, everything outwardly. Non-psychologically you depend on society. But to be free of society implies psychological freedom. That is, to be totally free from ambition, from envy, greed, power, position, prestige. But unfortunately, we have translated the freedom from society most absurdly. We think freedom from society is to change clothes. Put on a sannyasi robe and you think you are free from the world. Or become a monk and you have somehow destroyed the world or society. Far from it. You may put on a loincloth, but inwardly you are psychologically bound by society, because you are still ambitious, still envious, still seeking power. So a mind that is inquiring into freedom must be totally free from society, psychologically, and also from the dependence on the family. You know, family is the most convenient form of resistance. Because that resistance is made highly respectable by society. And if you observe how entangled the mind is in the family, the family has become the means of your fulfillment. The family has become the means of your immortality, through the name, through idea, through the tradition. I do not say the family must be destroyed. It can't. Every revolution has tried it. It cannot be destroyed. But to be psychologically free of the family, inwardly, not to depend on the family. Why does one depend? Have you ever gone into the question of psychological dependence? If you have gone into it very deeply, you will find that most of us are terribly lonely. Most of us have such shallow, empty minds. Most of us do not know what love means. And so, out of that loneliness, out of that insufficiency, out of our privation of life, we are attached to something, which is the family. We depend upon it. And when the wife or the husband turns away from us, we are jealous. And jealousy is not love. But love, which society acknowledges in the family, is made respectable. So that's another form of defense, another form of escape from ourselves. So again, every form of resistance breeds dependency. And a mind that is dependent can never be free. And you need to be free. Because you will see, a mind that is free is the essence of humility. Because such a mind which is free and therefore has humility can learn. Not a mind that resists. Learning is an extraordinary thing. To learn. Not to accumulate knowledge. Accumulating knowledge is quite a different thing. That's comparatively easy, because that is a movement from the known to the known, what we call knowledge. But to learn is a movement from the unknown to the unknown. And that's, you learn only that way, don't you, really, if you observe yourself. Moment you know something and you say, I will learn, you are adding to the thing which you already know. So you are never learning, you are merely acquiring, adding. It's an additive process. But learning is freedom. You can only learn in freedom, not in acquiring. And so, a mind that is free is learning and therefore capable of that extraordinary energy, which can never be corrupted. That is, a mind has energy through resistance, through conflict, through contradiction. We all know that form of energy. But there is an energy which comes when there is no conflict of any kind, and therefore completely incorruptible. I'm going to explain presently. I mean by the mind the totality of consciousness and more. The brain is one thing and the mind is another. The brain, which is the result of time, which is sensation, which has accumulated knowledge through centuries of experience, that brain is conditioned. As also the total consciousness is conditioned. These words, consciousness and conditioning, are very simple. What you are, the educated the unconscious, the accumulative mind, the accumulated consciousness of time, all that is consciousness, all that is you. What you think, what you feel, when you call yourself a Hindu, when you call yourself a Muslim or Christian, this or that, all this story about yourself is the total consciousness. Whether you think you are the supreme self or the greatest Atman or this or that, it's still within the field of consciousness, which is within the field of thought. And thought is conditioned. Now, in that state of conditioned resistance to life, you do create energy. The more resistance and more conflict, the more energy you have of the most destructive, stupid kind, which is what is actually going on in the world. That energy dissipates itself, is always corrupting, it always needs stimulation, always needs some form of attachment through which it can derive power, energy, growth. Please follow all this. Now, when one realizes that fact and sees that fact that our energy comes into being through resistance, and when you have understood the whole story of contradiction which in yourself, then out of that, seeing the fact, there comes a different kind of energy. Now, the energy of which I am talking about is not the energy preached by religion. Not the energy of the brahmachari, the bachelor, who refuses sex because he wants to have the supreme experience. Because his whole process of living, the sannyasi life or the monk life, is a form of resistance. And that does give you energy. A very limited, narrow, destructive energy, which is what most religions offer. But what we are talking about is a totally different kind of energy. That energy is born out of freedom, not out of resistance, not out of self-denial, not out of ideational pursuits and disciplines. If you understand all these which I have been talking about and face these facts, then out of that comes an energy which is incorruptible. Because, you see, that energy is passion. Not the passion of sex or of identifying yourself with the country, with an idea. That gives you also a peculiar kind of energy, passion, which is destructive. Haven't you noticed how people who have identified themselves with their nation, with their country, with their job, they have peculiar energy, as most politicians have, as most so-called missionaries, or those who have identified themselves with an idea, with a belief, with a dogma, as the communists. They have peculiar energy, which is most destructive. But the energy, which is the most creative energy, has no identification. It comes with freedom. And that energy is creation. You know, we have, man throughout the ages has sought God, either denied it or accepted it. Denied it as the atheists or the communists or you, the Hindu, who accept it because you have been brought up in it. Because you have been brought up in the belief you are no more religious than the man who is being brought up in non-belief. We are all about the same. It suits you to believe in God, it doesn't suit him to believe in God. It's a matter of your education, of your environmental, cultural influence. But man has sought this thing throughout centuries. There is something immense, not measurable by man, not by a mind that is caught in resistance, not caught in ambition, envy, greed. Such a mind can never understand this energy. There is this energy which is completely incorruptible. It can live in this world, function. Every day it can function in your office, in your family. Because that energy is love. Not the love of your wife and children, which is not love at all. Because that creation, that energy is destructive. Look what you have done to find that energy. You have destroyed. You have destroyed everything around you, psychologically. Inwardly, you have completely broken down everything that society, religion, politicians have built. So that energy is death. Death is completely destructive. And that energy is love. And therefore, love is destructive. Not the tame thing which the family has made of it. Not the tame thing which religions have nurtured. So, that energy is creation. Not the thing that you write a poem or put in a marble. That is merely capacity or a gift to express something which you feel. But the thing we are talking about is beyond all feeling, beyond all thought. And a mind that does not find it, a mind that hasn't completely freed itself from society, psychologically. Society being ambition, envy, greed, acquisitiveness, power. Do what it will never find that. And we must find it. Because that is the only salvation for man. Because in that only there is real action. And that itself, when it acts, is action.